In today's video, we'll be working through a sample answer for this IELTS Writing Task 1 process question. The focus will be on using advanced vocabulary and a variety of sentence structures essential for achieving higher band scores. In IELTS process questions, you might encounter either natural processes such as life cycles or man-made processes such as recycling and electricity generation. Interestingly, this process has elements of both. This process is largely industrial or man-made, but it does have a natural element where plants and trees grow or carbon dioxide goes back into atmosphere. We'll look at understanding of this process in more detail later. When writing about processes in IELTS, you mostly use the present simple tense because it describes things that happen regularly or in a sequence. But another important thing to understand is the voice, whether it's active or passive. In natural processes such as life cycles and plant growth, you can use both active and passive voice. In man-made or industrial processes, we generally prefer to use the passive voice. For example, in this case, in passive voice, the sentence would be, cellulose is extracted from the plants. To write this in active voice, we need to mention who is extracting the cellulose. We could write, workers extract cellulose from the plants, or people extract cellulose. And in some writings I've seen, we extract cellulose. So this is not preferred. The preferred way for man-made processes is passive voice. Next, let's quickly look at some vocabulary which can help us write about processes. Writing about processes is all about telling what happens in the first step, then what happens in the next step, and so on. But we need to make sure that we use variety of words and phrases to do so. So we can begin with something like firstly, or to begin with. Then we can use different types of words and phrases like next, following this, after that, and so on. Here are some other phrases that you can write when transitioning from one step to another. Rather than repeatedly writing, then this happens and then this happens, you can use phrases such as, after this has been done, or upon completion of this step, etc. Let's now talk about the process that we have. Even though we just have to write about one step after another, make sure you look at the whole process, understand broadly what is going on in the whole process before you start writing. You do not need to write these steps in your planning before you start writing, but you do need to understand every step. And sometimes there could be arrows running in two directions, which is when you do need to plan how to write it. This is something that I have discussed in another video. The link must be on your screen now, and I'll also leave the link in the description of this video. So let's quickly go through the steps to ensure that we understand them. The process is about the production of ethanol, which is a biofuel. Fuel is anything that is burnt to produce energy. So petrol, diesel, coal, wood, all of these are examples of fuel. Biofuel is any fuel which is made from organic material, for example, from plants or animal waste. So biofuel is considered to be more environmentally friendly. The first step of this process that we have starts from here. Plants and trees grow using energy from sunlight and from carbon dioxide. These plants are harvested. Harvesting means that the plants are cut and gathered. These harvested plants are then taken for pre-processing. After pre-processing of plants, what we get is cellulose. This cellulose is then sent for processing again. After this processing, we get sugars. What we have here is the chemical structure or the chemical diagram of the sugars. This is something we don't need to be concerned about when we are writing about the process. Next, microbes are added. Microbes are tiny organisms, very small organisms. Examples of microbes are bacteria and viruses. So, after microbes are added to the sugars, we get ethanol. This ethanol is the biofuel that is mentioned in our question. It is used for different modes of transport. So, we have an airplane, a truck, and a car here. The exhaust or the emissions from all of these is carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide goes back into the environment, and in this way, we are back to the first step of our process. Any process that goes back to its first step is a cyclic process. The life cycles of organisms, such as silkworm, are also cyclic processes. The opposite of cyclic process is a linear process. So sometimes we get linear processes in our writing, but this is not a linear process, this is a cyclic process. So once we understand the process, we can start writing about it. The format that we follow is introduction, which has paraphrasing of the question, followed by overall statement, followed by the body paragraphs. So we can divide our body paragraphs into two, write half of the steps in the first body paragraph and the second half in the second body paragraph. We start with a few different ways to paraphrase the question. We can paraphrase the question by using synonyms or by restructuring the sentence. In the two paraphrasing examples that you see on screen, I've used synonyms. I've changed diagram to illustration, shows to depicts, produced to manufactured. And I've made some sentence structure changes as well. Instead of biofuel called ethanol, I've written ethanol, a biofuel. Here are two more paraphrasing examples. In these, I have also mentioned the beginning and ending of the process. So I've written the diagram illustrates the process involved in the production of ethanol from plant growth to its use as a fuel and the release of carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. This one says the diagram shows the steps involved in the production of ethanol, a biofuel, highlighting both natural processes like plant growth and industrial stages such as processing of cellulose. So we can use any one of these in our writing. After writing this, we move on to the overall statement. In the overall statement, we can mention the number of steps in a process. In a process such as this one, which has a lot of steps, we can just say that there are multiple steps or it is a multi-step process. We can highlight that it's a cyclic process, and we can mention the beginning and ending of the process as well. One example of overall statement is, overall, the process involves multiple stages, beginning with plant growth and ending with emission of carbon dioxide after ethanol is used as fuel. The cycle repeats as carbon dioxide is absorbed by plants in the initial stage. Now we start with the body paragraphs where we write about each of the steps in detail. The process commences with plants and trees absorbing energy from sunlight and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, enabling their growth. Once fully matured, the plants are harvested and subjected to pre-processing, during which cellulose is extracted from the plant material. Following this, the extracted cellulose undergoes a conversion process in which it is transformed into sugars. Here, the second sentence actually contains three steps: the harvesting of plants, the pre-processing, and the extraction of cellulose. This type of sentence structure is more advanced and can enhance your writing. However, it's not always recommended if you're struggling to meet the required 150 word count, which can happen when the process has fewer steps. In this case, I've combined the three steps into one sentence because I'm still able to meet the word count. Of course, this structure makes the sentence more sophisticated, but if you're aiming for a simpler structure or need more words to reach the word count, you can split it into three sentences like this. Once fully matured, the plants are harvested using agricultural equipment. After harvesting, the next step is pre-processing of the harvested plant material. After pre-processing is done, cellulose is obtained from the plant material. So we have written till here. Let's write about the rest of the steps now. Subsequently, microbes are introduced to the sugars, triggering fermentation and leading to the production of ethanol. This ethanol is collected and utilized as a biofuel in various vehicles such as airplanes, trucks, and cars. As ethanol is combusted, carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere, completing the cycle. Thus, the process demonstrates a continuous cycle in which ethanol is produced and used as fuel, with carbon dioxide being released and reabsorbed by plants. I can also write this as: next, microbes are introduced to the sugars, resulting in the production of ethanol. This ethanol is collected and used as fuel in vehicles such as airplanes, trucks, and cars. I can rewrite this last part about the process being cyclic as: during the combustion of ethanol, carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere, which is subsequently reabsorbed by plants, thus perpetuating the cycle. And that's it for today's video. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more IELTS related content. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments below. That's it for now. All the very best.